Can you call this homecoming? What word is there for it when home has been turned to this? Since yesterday, the UN estimates nearly 200,000 people have been on the move, leaving the encampments in the far south, where they'd fled Israel's latest advance on Gaza City, desperate to return to their neighborhoods, their communities, the familiar. Now suddenly anything but that.
We can't even tell where the roads used to be. Show it with your camera. We can't recognize the roads anymore. This isn't a life to be lived, to come back hoping to find a home, instead finding rubble.
This is the northern Gaza City suburb of Sheikh Radwan, or was before Israeli forces moved in mid-September. Not even winter clothes recoverable from Suhair Al-Absi's house, but the journey, she says, was still worth it.
Our great joy is that we're back up north. What matters most is that we came back to the place where we belong.
People returning too to southern Khan Yunis after Israeli forces withdrawal from there. Aid trucks struggling their way through its streets, their cargo taken as they go. We need the aid to be handled officially and delivered to people like before, he says. I'm being run over by the trucks. The ceasefire deal stipulates a ramping up of aid. The Israeli military says hundreds of trucks have entered Gaza in recent days. The UN says the operation is set to scale up further tomorrow.
So when people know that they're going to be able to receive supplies, whether that's food or other items, they're less likely to feel like they need to take that off the back of a truck. And we saw that in the February ceasefire. When the volume of aid increased, the desperation and the looting decreased.
But along with food and shelter, an acute need for medical aid. One British team due to go in tomorrow has been denied access by the Israeli military.
In May, June, I was operating on 12 patients every day. So to deny 3 surgeons and an anaesthetist access at this time doesn't really sit well with this peace plan.
But there is much that doesn't sit with the plan as set out by Donald Trump, not least Hamas's resurgence on Gaza's streets. It has said it's willing to hand over governance to a Palestinian body, but will retain its weapons, something the Israeli Prime Minister has said he would not allow.
Interior Ministry forces are deploying across Gaza in the areas that are not under the control of the occupation, especially at the intersections and markets, for the security of citizens.
But images on social media show reprisals over law enforcement. Reports that anti-Hamas clan members have been shot in the street. Elsewhere, of gun battles breaking out. Inside the Israeli-occupied part of Gaza, a briefing today for the US envoy Steve Witkoff, President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, and the head of the US Army in the region. His forces due under the deal to set up a coordination hub inside Israel. They also visited the Israeli base, prepping for what is the priority here, the return of the hostages. In Tel Aviv's Hostages Square, the clock still ticks on from their capture as the people count down to their release.
We finally feel hope, but we cannot and would not stop now. Every single hostage must come home, the living and the deceased. Every family deserves closure.
Palestinian families also preparing for reunions as Israel readies the release of nearly 2,000 people, 250 serving life sentences. In the Egyptian resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, where the ceasefire was agreed, finishing touches ahead of a summit of world leaders, including President Trump, on Monday. But it is in Gaza that the foundations of any lasting deal will have to be built, and where, even after 2 years, so much can still go wrong.
Well, right here in Hostage Square, the US Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, has been speaking. Let's hear just a little bit of what he said.
This is the most powerful sight. I don't know how many people are out there. It's quite a bit, as I can tell. Looks like almost more than 100,000 people here tonight.
Well, our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Porrick O'Brien, is with me. Quite a moment.
Absolutely. I mean, just before the speech, Steve Witkoff met with the hostages' families in the building behind me. I briefly caught up with Yehuda Cohen, that's the father of Nimrod Cohen, one of the hostages still inside. He was very appreciative towards Witkoff, of course, but also said no new news, nothing to report substantially in that. But then Steve Witkoff takes to the stage. A rapturous applause at the beginning. He continues for a few moments. Then he tries to thank Benjamin Netanyahu, and this happened.
To Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Oh.
Right, okay, so let's turn to another side of what's going on today. You spent the day in the West Bank because, as well as the hostages coming out of Gaza, there are going to be Palestinian prisoners and detainees who are going back into Palestinian areas.
That's right, very different atmosphere where we were. I mean, muted celebrations you could hear as you were passing some flats along the little alleyways in the big refugee camps in Bethlehem and the West Bank. Nothing like this, of course. It's going to be a difficult few hours. 1,700, about 2,000 I should say, excuse me, Palestinian prisoners are due to be released. About 1,700 of them were arrested during the course of the war in Gaza. They will be returned to Gaza. But it's the others, over 250 prisoners that have life sentences. Some of them will be released. That'll be very difficult. Some of them will be deported and some returned to the West Bank. But some of these people, of course, have been accused and sentenced in an Israeli court to very, very fatal attacks, killing multiple Israelis. So that will be a difficult pill to swallow for many of those families.
Thanks, Porrick. Well, earlier today I spoke to Ruby Chen, the American father of Itai Chen, who was 19 and doing his national service in the IDF near Gaza on October the 7th, when he was kidnapped and is now believed to be among the dead. Ruby is one of the speakers here on the stage tonight, but earlier I visited him at his home in Netanya.
We were notified in March 24 that most likely Itai was killed, but there was nothing physical. And we were told that we could begin the Jewish tradition of a Shiva. If you know what that is, it's the ceremony of a week that you mourn for a loved one that was killed. And me and my wife, we looked at one another and we said, he's not here. If he's not here, he's not here. And that's also a statement to the politicians and to the President of the United States. And I asked them, when are we going to have, you want this to end? You end it like it's supposed to be, with him back with us. And the government of Israel defined its war objectives. There were a number. One of them was dismantling Hamas. 2 was making sure that October 7th does not happen again. And 3, creating the conditions that we can return the hostages. And what we've seen, unfortunately, is that those objectives do not always behave in harmony, and they sometimes are in friction with one another. And it's unfortunate to say, but after 2 years, we could say that the return of the hostages did not supersede the other 2 objectives.
You've been very involved in campaigning, and as an American, you've had, I guess, some access to the administration. What difference do you feel you've been able to make?
I think at the beginning, when this all began, the White House was led by President Biden and his team. We, as the U.S. families, have been blessed by the empathy that we received and the envelope of support compared to here in Israel. And the bottom line is that they were unsuccessful. As a U.S. citizen, I had hoped to believe that the administration would prioritize the 12 U.S. citizens that were taken hostage, and that was not the fact. And then this new administration came with President Trump with a totally different style of policy, as well as his view how to negotiate. And we saw the White House orchestrating this that started a few weeks ago at the UN, with the president coming out, talking about the hostages, creating meetings with the Arab countries, the moderate ones, and others. And you saw the alignment happening. And that has cultivated to what we have at the moment, which is a deal that was signed. We still are taking it slow because it's not over till it's over. And we just need to make sure we get this into the end zone, meaning getting this to the finish line for all the families.
What does the finish line mean? I mean, is it, do you think you can have a resolution?
It's the end of one chapter, but that means that it will be a beginning of another chapter. And I hope to believe that the return of the hostages will also trigger maybe a new type of dynamics within the people here in Israel, where we've been divided by politics. We hope that that rehabilitation that cost over 2,000 killed Jewish people, tens of thousands of injured in soul and in spirit and in body, that there needs to be a new type of beginning. And yes, also the people in Gaza, I feel for them. There are people that are starving, that are in hunger. We could argue, is it because of Hamas? But it doesn't matter. But they're also suffering. And the international community has let this go on for 2 years. It's like two kids fighting in a playground. At some point, the adults come in and they say, enough is enough. I think that should have happened a long time ago.
Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. God bless.
Well, that's the news in Israel for now. Now over to Kaylee in the studio in London.
Tens of thousands of pro-Palestine demonstrators marching here in central London have cautiously welcomed the ceasefire, but many have questions about the longer-term prospects for a permanent peace. Some carried placards with controversial slogans. There were also arrests of some pro-Israel protesters who police said had breached their conditions, which stipulated a specific location for the counter-demonstrators.
The bombs may be stopping, but before today's march had even started, tensions the war has stoked back here in Britain rose to the surface.
I stand with Britain's Jews and I'm being arrested, right?
Especially after what happened in Manchester. The Palestine solidarity marches are, say some British Jews, intimidating.
This is what we've got to stop on our streets, the rising anti-Semitism, because this is what it needs to.
Right.
Jewish people dead in the streets.
So how do we resolve this then if people who are concerned about Palestinians and the situation in Gaza, should they not be allowed to march? If you're allowed to do this, then they should be allowed to do that, surely.
No, well, we wouldn't
what's the difference?
We wouldn't be here if this wasn't happening.
But it's their democratic right to do so.
Not to shout hate.
What's going on, madam? What's your poster?
It says we stand with Jews.
Right. And,
what is wrong with British people standing with Jews?
We saw at least 2 counter-protesters arrested for breaching public order restrictions.
What do you make of the British Jews that we saw saying this is a hate march?
I mean, it's quite clearly not a hate march, but I suppose you're always going to get people against any sort of movement.
There is an apparent end looming to 2 years of unimaginable violence, but the issues that created that in the first place, they haven't gone away, and it continues to bring people out onto the streets in their thousands.
A quote, "Free Palestine" has support from some in the Jewish Orthodox community too, but it isn't something the peace deal is about to either define or deliver.
What is the long-term change that you want to see?
Long-term change, a proper two-state solution with the international community holding Israel responsible.
Right, and what about what Israel would say that Hamas definitely needs to be completely dissolved?
Yeah, so Hamas should be dissolved, but it's hard to kind of, because of urban warfare and stuff, I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but we need to see an independent Palestinian government with the two-state solution, and that they can be, not all the time oppressed by Israel.
We need to recognize, as Amnesty International have said repeatedly, what an occupation and illegal apartheid is. Change is possible. A future of shared humanity is possible. But first, we must recognize an occupation, an apartheid, and a genocide.
Of course, apartheid and genocide are descriptions Israel rejects. At today's official counter-demo, the two sides were kept well apart. The pro-Israel protesters playing Another One Bites the Dust as they celebrated the deaths of several Hamas leaders.